So most of the channels who make videos about firewood split their firewood into these IBC totes. And I've been doing the same thing and I love using them. But I've also been giving it a lot of thought to the cost of these totes, because I'm looking at expanding how much firewood I do. And if I expand it a lot, I'm going to have to invest a lot of time and money into these totes. And I mean a lot of money. So it got me thinking today, is it worth it? Is it just a YouTube thing, or are professional firewood guys doing this? Is it worth it for a homeowner who just does enough for them? Is it worth it for a small business? Is it worth it for a big business? So I'm gonna prep all these totes to get them ready for firewood. And then once that's done, I wanna have a real conversation about how convenient these are and, what they cost you. So I normally take all the fasteners off to take these top rails off, but they all have different types of fasteners and I don't feel like it. I'm gonna see if it's easier just to cut those top rails off and then lift the tote out and then cut my front. And this battery's dead. I don't know why I had a 2 amp on it. So that is 1 tote prepped, and I've got 9 more to go. And it'd be really repetitive to show all those, so I'm not going to. But I did a video a couple weeks ago comparing different metal cutting tools, and I want to see if the reciprocating saw is actually more efficient on these totes than the grinder. Well, with those 2 blades, I feel like it's faster and easier with the reciprocating saw, and it's not, throwing those little metal flecks at my face. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of them with that, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got all these totes cut down. I now have 11 empty totes, so I'll be able to work for a while before I run out. But definitely, that's not gonna last all winter. 15 totes, or what did I say, 11 totes? "11 totes is a little bit less than 4 cords of wood. So these totes aren't gonna last me all year. So I've been questioning, what if I do 20 cords? Am I gonna buy that many totes? So let's talk about time and efficiency, and then we'll talk about the money. So the first year I started cutting firewood, I saw a lot of people on YouTube using these totes. I thought, man, that looks so handy, because I've burned firewood to heat my home in the past. And most of it, I would split some wood with a splitting maul, and I would buy some wood. And the big hassle was they would dump that firewood in my driveway or my yard, and I would have to stack it. And then I'd usually end up stacking it again. And the first year I cut firewood, I'm like, man, I'm stacking wood multiple times. I stack it down here, and then I move it up there and stack it, and then I take it in the house. I thought those totes would be the perfect solution, and I'm not going to do that much firewood. So I think I bought 6 totes, and I've been using those. I think this is 3 years I've been using firewood totes, and I love using firewood totes. It's so convenient because, like I've been saying, it prevents you from handling the wood as much, and you can take it wherever you need. If you're going to sell a tote of firewood, you can pick it up and set it in the customer's bed, and that's a win-win. The only hassle there is you have to go to the trouble to make sure you get the totes back. Or if you're taking it to them, or whatever the case may be, you may tell them you've got the choice that you can either take this tote and bring it back to me, or you can unload it into the truck bed. So that is more of a customer preference thing. But you do have, if you're doing a lot of this, let's say you were doing this for a living, it'd be a major hassle trying to always get your totes back. If you're selling 10 totes a year, 12 totes a year, like my memory's that good, or I can make a little list. But if you were selling hundreds of totes, that's a lot to keep track of. So, now we've talked about the convenience factor, and it's definitely a win on convenience, but now let's talk about cost. So for a homeowner who says they do, let's say, 3 cords a year, you'll need 9 totes. But really, you might need 18 totes, because you'll have the 3 totes full of wood that you cut last year that you're going to use this year. But now you need to cut the firewood this year that you're going to use next year. So you really need twice as many totes as the amount of wood you use in a year. So on average around here, a firewood tote costs around $50. And they used to be $25 and $30. Now I'm seeing them for $60 and $80. But let's just say $50. And I get mine off Facebook Marketplace, and it may vary what's available in different areas, but let's say $50 a tote, then you're going to spend $900 on firewood totes. So in year 1, that's a huge waste to spend $900 to store firewood when you only burn $450 of firewood a year. But the thing about it is you're going to be able to reuse these for a long time, and you don't have to buy them all at once. You could get 2 totes this year and just get 2 totes next year, and you might hardly even notice that money you're spending. But it does add up. Then you've got someone like me who's doing enough firewood to make a little bit of side money, but it's definitely not my job. So last year, I didn't do that much. I think I did 6 cords. And 6 cords, that's 18 totes for 1 year's wood. But if you're putting all your wood in it, you need that twice. So now you're talking about 36 of these totes at $50 a piece. You're talking about spending $1,800 on top of your chainsaw and your tractor and your splitter and your grapple and your fuel and your depreciation. Now you're trying to make a little bit of money, and you're spending another $1,800 so that you don't have to stack the wood as often. It probably honestly doesn't make sense. Another way to think about that is that the tote costs almost as much as the wood in it is worth. So essentially, every time you buy a firewood tote, you're splitting the first stack of wood in that tote for free to pay for the tote. And that doesn't sound really appealing to me, to say you're working for free your first year just for the totes, not to mention all your other equipment that costs a lot of money. And then talk about a big firewood operation. You know, some of these operations do 500 cords, 1,000 cords a year. Trying to think about, I mean, and that's turning over a lot of money in a business like that, but trying to think about the logistics of handling 1,000 of these totes. So what my friend Paul does, for those of you who don't watch this channel all the time, I have a friend, Paul Case, who earns a large percentage of his living by selling firewood. He does not use totes. And I wonder if most of the guys who make a good percentage of their living selling firewood don't use these totes. Now, the guys I see on YouTube who don't use the totes are just stacking their wood a lot. Ohio Wood Burner kind of brags about the more times you touch the wood, the better off you are. And he stacks his wood, and then he restacks it, and then he stacks it in the trailer, and then he stacks it at the customer's house. And he seems thrilled to stack his wood 4 or 5 times every time. And he kind of is talking about that the way he's handling it, and the way he's cutting it, and the way he's drying it, and the way he delivers it in neat stacks makes it a premium product, and he charges more for his firewood, so it's worth it. But doesn't seem like that's the route I want to go. An alternative, my friend Paul splits all of his with the Halverson firewood processor, or most of his, and most of it he never touches once. He picks the log up with the machine, splits it with the machine from the cab, makes a big pile, brings the rock bucket in on a skid steer or a regular bucket or whatever, and shoves those piles up, and then when he's ready to sell it, he comes in and grabs piles of firewood with his bucket, dumps them into his dump truck, which for some of you that might be a dump trailer, just scoops it up with that, dumps it in the dump trailer, knows what one load, loose stacked, loose thrown like that is, and drives to the property and dumps it. So now you're talking about someone who's serious about making some money with this, and he never touches that tree. He cuts it down, cuts it again, loads it on a log trailer, dumps the log trailer, picks the firewood rounds, the logs, up with his machine. He can take a standing tree to a sold stack of firewood and never touch the wood. And I find that highly appealing. But also, firewood processors are really expensive. So, are these totes worth it? I think these totes are awesome. And if you like to split firewood and you're going to do it whether it's profitable or not, get you some totes. They're handy. But if you're making all your decisions from a dollars and cents standpoint, it might not be worth it. Now, my thought is I think I'm going to continue buying these totes. Maybe not enough of them for all of my firewood this year, but I'm going to just continue accumulating totes as I find deals on them. And think of it as a long-term investment, that these totes should last for several years and they'll pay for themselves over time, and I can acquire a lot of them over time. Probably kind of a long-winded video, but the point of these videos is not that I like to talk. The point is I'm trying to decide what makes sense for me, and I want to compare that with your experience to see what makes sense for all of us. So I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.